Shalom, my name is Yehonatan Ben Devoy. This is going to be the final video on idolatry. The last video I made it clear that the Impact Video Ministries used for idolatry was being more than a statue was not a good argument. It relied on faulty information, or rather, what was it called? It relied on information that was, quote unquote, outdated. Now I'm going to illustrate why the church father Tertullian was wrong. The occurrences that show repeated behaviors are allowed. In several locations in the Tanakh, Hashem allowed several people to allowed certain people to do repeated actions, and it wasn't a problem. Those locations are Judges 8:30 through 32 and 2 Samuel 12:8. My translation of Judges 8:30 through 32 says the following. But to Gideon he had 70 sons that came forth from his loins, for he had many wives. And his concubine who was in Shechem bore to him a son, and she named him Avimelech. And Gideon, the son of Joash, died at an old age and was buried in the sepulchre of Joash in Ophrah of the Abiezrites. Ultimately, Gideon gave birth to 71 sons. How much desire does that require? Quite a few, doesn't it? In fact, he wasn't struck dead because of he having too much sex. Instead, he died at a good old age. He died at a long age, essentially. My translation of 2 Samuel 12:8. I have given to you the house of your master and his wives to your bosom, and I have given to you the house of Israel and Judah, and if that were little, I would have added to you more and more of these things. Ultimately, Hashem gave to David Saul's wives. Now, Hashem was chastising David for the act of adultery. Why didn't he chastise him earlier if idolatry was a behavior? In fact, why did he state that he would add more to him? My other arguments. What counts as a legitimate work? In Exodus, Hashem commanded us to build the tabernacle. They worked on it 6 days a week, apart from Shabbats, as we see in Exodus 35. Well, if idolatry is just a desire along with work, then why did Hashem command them to build the tabernacle? Was Hashem entrapping them into idolatry? You see, it just doesn't make logical sense. In fact, we are told in 1 Thessalonians 5:17 by Paul to pray without ceasing. Well, if idolatry is a behavior and desire, then why did Paul tell us to pray without ceasing? What if actually you like the works that he commands you to do? Just a thought. In fact, it could be argued that these are quote-unquote approved works since they were to Hashem. Now, I'm going to ask a question. What works are allowed and what aren't? Remember, I showed that sexual desire was allowed according to the commands. Those are done to Hashem, including sex was, as we see with as we see when Hashem gave David Saul's wives right after he died. So ultimately, you have to assume not only prayer and the tabernacle, but also approved sexual behaviors, even lust is allowed. The time that it's not is when you covet your neighbor's wife, or when you do something that is not necessarily appropriate, like, well, yeah, in the other sexual laws. So when is it when is it when is it good, or when is it not? I mean, why did Hashem even do this in the first place? You see, ultimately you have to settle on a decision, and the decision ultimately falls apart. And the decision ultimately falls apart when you focus on, what was it called? Making covetousness, or even a desire or a behavior, idolatry. It just doesn't make sense. So, there we go. I sure hope this study has blessed you. Thank you.